Well, some of you weren't here when I did the first part. Very quick summary. Abraham Lincoln is running for president in 2016. It's an imaginative construct. His opponent is Phineas T. Windbag, United States Senator. In the last speech, we talked about how his little helpers, all Francis Underwood wannabes, or as I like to say, FU Mark I, Mark II, and Mark III, have disposed effectively of the Lincoln candidacy, turning it, leaving it, bleaching in the sun. However, there's another way this story could turn out, because Phineas T., for all his sagacity and all his wizardly working of words in his own way, has left a few things out. They did in his day too. A poem from some years ago runs like this. Tell us of his fight with Douglas. Stephen Douglas was the man he ran against then. Tell us of his fight with Douglas, how his bearing never quailed. Tell us of his manly bearing, of his skill at splitting rails. Any lie you tell will swallow any kind of mixture. But oh, don't we pray and beg you, don't for God's sake show his picture. He was considered somewhat ugly. So it's not the first time that he's been underestimated by an opponent. I want to share with you a few instances from Lincoln's career that highlight some of the things that maybe shouldn't have been underestimated. One story from his career as a lawyer. A few years before this election cycle, he was involved in a very high-profile case. His client was a steamship company, and it was against a railroad company, and it had to do with low-lying trestles across a river. The attorney for the railroad argued brilliantly as to why the economy of the whole region demanded free and unfettered access of railroads across rivers. His summary took about an hour. Lincoln's summary was one sentence. What this jury has to decide is whether one group has more right to go across a river than another has to go up and down a river. He won the case. Now I'd like to talk about how he handled his opponents, which should also have been more in the crosshairs of FU Marks 1, 2, and 3 and their advising of Phineas T. Windbag. He spent 2 years in Washington, count them, one term in the House of Representatives, and he did that after he defeated a fire and brimstone preacher by the name of Peter Cartwright. The story goes that during the course of the campaign, he attended one of Cartwright's services. And during the course of the service, I'm using my book, by the way, I've annotated my own research. During the course of the campaign, he attended one of his services. And during the service, Preacher Cartwright asked all that who desired to give their lives to God and go to heaven should stand. And of course, everyone stood up, except Lincoln. He then asked all those who did not wish to go to hell to stand. And of course, everyone stood up, except Lincoln. Cartwright, of course, was sensitive to the fact that Lincoln was in the congregation. He then pointedly asked Lincoln if he didn't stand an answer to either question, where exactly did he intend to go? Lincoln replied, "I came here as a respectful listener. I did not know I was to be singled out by Brother Cartwright. I believe in treating religious matters with due solemnity. I admit that the questions propounded by Brother Cartwright are of great importance. I did not feel called upon to answer as the rest did. Brother Cartwright asks me directly where I am going. I desire to reply with equal directness. I'm going to Congress." This is a short speech. I can't get too carried away with examples, but I do have one more. PT should have paid attention to Stephen Douglas's comments. And this is what Douglas said after those Lincoln-Douglas debates. "Every one of his stories seems like a whack on my back. Nothing else. Not any of his arguments or any of his replies to my questions disturbs me. But when he begins to tell a story, I feel I am to be overmatched." Because words have power. As Winston Churchill says, words are the only things that last forever. But it wasn't just when he told a story. At one point during those debates, Douglas came out with some series of words that argued for something that we needn't go into here. And Lincoln, rather than dealing with what he argued, dismissed the argument altogether as a specious, quote, specious and fantastic arrangement of words by which a man sets out to prove a horse chestnut to be a chestnut horse. Now, I would suggest to you that at this point, everybody in the crowd laughed. And one of the definitions of being a politician is you get the last word. Now, when the laughter died down, what's Douglas going to say? History does not record what Douglas said, but I could imagine it went something like this. Well, anyway, right? That's like a verbal equivalent of a sidestepping pregnant duck. And at another time, Lincoln followed his argument with this. Hasn't it got down about as thin as a homeopathic soup made by boiling the shadow of a pigeon that died of starvation? Everybody knows that zingers in a political debate are crucial. And he just did the mother of all zingers. But there was more to Lincoln than that, because there was substance as well. That is the issue that will continue in this country when these poor tongues of Judge Douglas and myself shall be silent. It is the eternal struggle between these two principles, right and wrong, throughout the world. They are the two principles that have stood face to face from the beginning of time and will ever continue to struggle. The one is the common right of humanity. and the other, the divine right of kings. And this final quote may be a reason why you would vote against Lincoln, but it certainly applies every bit as much in our day as it did in a day when brother killed brother, to the point where 2% of the population had died in 49 months. Let us at all times remember that all American citizens are brothers of a common country and should dwell together in the bonds of fraternal feeling. Glib though he may be, Phineas T. Windbag stands in the presence of the Master. Madam Toastmaster.